G'day, ladies and gentlemen, all the way from Australia. This is Jay here from the Life Theories crew on the 1111 Spiritual Podcast with Jackie Lyons. Thank you so much for joining us on this very, very special day. We have a great friend of mine over in the UK, Cortez Medford. You got to hook up with this bloke. His name's Chris. He's a life coach and a hypnotherapist. It's going to be really, really cool because on Life Theories and on the 1111 Spiritual Podcast, we talk about different things with regards to the modalities that people do, and hypnotherapy always comes up. I know I've been hypnotized by one of my mentors, Greg Riley, down here, Australia's #1 psychic. There's one for you, Greg. Hope you're well. And Michael McNair, who do 5 Dimensions. We're here to talk to you, Chris, and the platform is yours. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and I'm really excited to talk to you because, as I said, our viewers want to get to meet you and who you are, so we can spread the word. And you're part of our tribe, of course. And you were telling us off air about the socials getting involved, so you can tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved. And it's only a very recent journey for you, isn't it? So welcome to the show with a chat with Jay, and the floor is yours, my friend. All yours.
So great. Firstly, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure. And obviously, hopefully your viewers will get a sort of a bit of a background and something out of this chat. So obviously a bit about myself. I kind of had a spiritual awakening, which was probably going back now into sort of 2018 sort of period. I had a sort of a drop in terms of my family and everything that wasn't sustainable in my life. So I kind of was fading sort of out of the corporate environment and kind of moving towards more of a sort of coming home to self.
Can I ask you what job you did, Chris? Because I know I'm a school teacher by trade. What job were you coming from?
So I'm a chartered accountant, so I'm SEMA qualified.
So really corporate.
And I basically, I went through to master's degree level, obviously in accountancy. So it kind of formed the foundation for sort of most of my thought process in terms of what I now do. So obviously that was the 3D old life structure, but a lot of that was founded on sort of how you're sort of conditioned as a child, how you're brought up, your expectations, kind of just fitting into the matrix kind of structure in the system.
You're saying all the right words, mate. You're saying all the right words there.
Yeah, so I'd always known that sort of in the back of my head I was meant for more and I was meant for bigger. I kind of never really sort of worked out what that looked like or what that meant, until it kind of got to the point of desensitization, derealization, depersonalization, and my entire outlook on pretty much everything in life flipped. So I was starting to sort of break down all the limiting belief structures. I was sort of looking at things from different angles and perspectives. And that sort of only sort of came in sort of 2018 wise, sort of going back slightly earlier than that.
Can I ask you, Chris, you're going back to 2016, where was there a specific moment where, because we always say that there's a moment when you're a spiritual awakening, or I went through twin flames, so that was a moment. Was there any particular moment in your life that you don't have to go into as much detail as you want, but is there anything particular you go, right, that's when I go, hang on a minute, what's going on here?
Yeah, so back end of 2016, I had a physical kind of manifestation of all the structures. So if you think of the spine as a structure and you think of sort of the body in terms of holding all your energies or your past or your sort of ways of being, and you embody that kind of temple structure. Well, I had the lower quadrant of my back, sort of just above sort of the L1, L2 region. It went at a right angle. So literally I couldn't stand up straight. And that was sort of towards the end of 2016. And then I had to go into sort of chiropractic. And that's when it kind of all unfolded for me. Because then within like the next 3 to 6 months, going into early 2017, I then started having conversations at work with regards to a couple of people. And I found myself in like a boardroom, and it's kind of a really white background, if you can imagine, with like a wooden table, long table in the middle with kind of everything else is just white. And we were talking about astral projection and how you obviously get the white cord. And I was talking to this guy at sort of a weird offset, funny angle, and my neck clicked. And it was one of these weird kind of like it dropped to the shoulder. And I must have gone home that. Do you
think that was done like, do you feel like that was sort of like a message for you, or do you feel like, it just happened, or just that sounds like it just came out of nowhere to me.
Yeah, so it kind of came out of nowhere, but sort of I'm into like soul plans and sort of pre-birth plans, and I kind of look back now and think that that was kind of a point in my life that was meant to trigger like what would then become like my awakening. So if I got to this point in life and I hadn't changed anything, then this is when kind of that structure comes into
Cool.
place. So
Yep.
as I sort of hinted at, it's like my neck clicked and it sort of dropped, and I didn't think anything more of it at that point. And obviously went home, and then that's kind of when like my reality and sort of everything kind of just changed, because the way I was looking at things, I had sort of aura migraines. Um, I had sort of a real sort of shake up of my own safety and security. And obviously, as you're probably familiar with, the neck is kind of the bottleneck between the higher and the lower realms.
Yes.
So it's kind of symbolic of
Yeah. Well, obviously
kind
the
of
crown
just
chakra and
bridging
stuff.
that
Yeah.
gap.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, it was kind of a case of I then
Do
went
you feel,
into.
can I just cut you off there
Mhm.
just quickly?
Yeah, of
About
course.
go around the back. You said about the top there. Do you think that your back, excuse me, because I'm an ex-pro wrestler and I had the back
Mhm.
issue myself. I
Yeah.
find that that's the foundation. Do you feel like you were being not supportive to yourself, or do you feel like you had no real foundation? You were sort of in this 3D, walking around like the Sims, going, "I'll go to work, do this stuff." Do you reckon you lacked foundation or lacked support or anything like that? In
Yeah,
during
it
that
was it
time.
was kind of years worth of self-neglect. So I was
Okay.
very much sort of a family man. I was very much do everything for everybody else, make sure everybody else is fine. And you kind of get to the point where you bear that load, that you obviously you're kind of in that role of like provider as the father, that role as provider as the sort of husband, as it were, at the time, and partner at the time. So you obviously look after your family, they come first, and you end up running yourself into that burnout phase and that sort of running into the ground. So I got myself to that point and I was running that pattern for 7, 8 years. And kind of my body got to the point where it's like, well, no, this just isn't sustainable anymore. And it needs to break down in order to be kind of rebuilt properly.
Right.
So it was kind of just that personality or persona that
Mm.
was kind of being let go and released in order to step into more of who I was at the time,
Mm.
and more in line with where I was obviously going. So all of those structures then had to then fade away, but my body was embodying like the cellular memory or like the ancestral trauma of things gone on
Okay.
before.
Yep.
And it was kind of that just release of that, or part of that like onion layer of structure. So that was kind of going into early 2017. I then had that, and I then spent about a year going to sort of all of the medical kind of people. I had panic attacks, I had anxiety. I
As you
got
do,
checked
as
for,
we all
yeah,
do. We're sort
exactly.
of
Yeah.
we're sort of going through that. I know I was in, like, example, I was in a cell, say bounded, not in a cell,
Mhm.
and you're walking out and you sort of just don't know where you're at mentally because you're not used to it really, and
Yeah.
and you have to release all that, don't you?
Yeah. So obviously going into the traditional like societal, you need to go and see doctors, you need to go and get checked out. Obviously scans were done. I then had sort of an MRI on the brain. Everything was normal. I was literally labeled like the most healthy, unhealthy person by like the amount
Yeah.
of times I've been in and out of sort of all these places. And then I kind of at that point started looking for answers, because it's like how my brain works. I'm used to problem solving. So I'm solution focused rather than problem orientated. So I was like, well, there has to be an answer to this. It's like medicine or all these tablets, just they're not sustainable long term. So I then
Yeah.
started getting inquisitive, and I then started looking at all sort of the spiritual stuff, and I started looking at metaphors and like the metaphysical and sort of the meanings of things that were in the background.
Yep.
And then as I was doing that and stepping more into that stuff, like the old family structures and setups, they faded away, the relationships dissolved. I then got into a position whereby I then started on my own. So I then moved obviously to my own place away from the family after that structure broke down. And then it was then kind of like, now I have to kind of find myself and I have to build myself up to who I should be rather than who I thought that I should be based on what everybody else thought that I thought that they thought that I should be. If that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah, we
So
all go through that. We all go through that with
yeah.
our awakening process. My team on life theories, we always talk about, different, the way we've grown since we've started. And I think you're just saying that, you sort of go, okay, once that initial process happens, you got no choice. Any process that happens, you got no choice but to follow it through. I mean, and especially if you're aware and you're going that way. That's the way I'm seeing you, the way you're going. You obviously come a long way.
Yeah, it's kind of going back to like I used to be heavily involved in like the Matrix films. I used to love them and sort of working out kind of like the red pill, the blue pill, and then you sort of get to a point where you realize that the Matrix is basically a documentary on life. And when you start looking at all the key elements to it, you start following that trend. But then there's things like the Truman Show, Inception,
really
and all
funny.
these other things.
It's really funny you talk about that, Chris, because Jackie and I talk. I mean, I'm very much of the opinion where you're exactly what you say about the Matrix. I look at different, like, okay, if you've seen Revenge of the Nerds, right? Great little jock movie, but there's a deeper message in there, and I think that you watch, I mean, you enjoy the movie and you think it's funny, but there's all those kind of stereotypical type of movies, but you really attract to certain things because the universe is giving you messages. Is that how you felt with the Matrix?
Yeah, it's kind of, I've always been into that sort of film, sort of style, but then you've got things like Inception, The Truman Show, you've then got like Minority Report, and all these films that they're granted they're sort of created by Hollywood, but if you have a look at sort of more esoteric principles and have a look at the elites that are running the show, they have to tell us how things operate and how they work. And their modality is statistically like The Simpsons, for like predictions, but then like films will.
So you say, all right, I'll tell you what, just where Jackie and I are into that, right into that, and we're going to get experts on. So I'm sure you, the three of us, are going to have a nice chat about. I've heard about The Simpsons. I don't know. Get ready. The way we're going to get. Yeah, we're going to get. I won't get deleted or anything, but we're looking at the Teletubbies. That one freaked me out. You know about that one. So this. It's like, I think, would you agree with me, when you opened up to 5D, your opinion, and you really opened your mind to a lot of stuff? Because I mean, I started mine in '96 when I watched Cocktail from Tom Cruise, and I think that was an amazing movie for a spiritual and personal development at the start. Then moving into the Doctor Strange movie, which basically showed you about ascension. You know, about spiritual ascension. I'm a big believer in that. So yeah, sorry to cut you off there, mate. Sorry, keep going. It's really
it's all good.
Yeah.
But so I kind of got involved in that type of thing from a young age, but sort of most of my stuff from like real childhood was like Captain Gordon, Thunderbirds, Captain Scarlet, Flash Gordon, and He-Man. Yeah, so you've got like all these superhero type structures in the background. So kind of you can see where that now ties in for like a longer term period. But yeah, so I got
amazing. There's so many people out there that don't realize that you get attracted to these. We love superheroes. Like, I'm looking at certain things, and obviously I'm a professional cosplayer, and the characters that I do, obviously I do Nightwolf from Mortal Kombat, and the one I do at the moment is Nightwing from Titans. And I looked into what he was, and I go, oh God, that's me. That's scary. That's scary. And now they're moving me into Robin, so I'm going to look into him, Tim Drake Robin. So yeah, but mate, very, very interesting stuff. Sorry, keep going there. It's great chat so far.
So basically got to the point where kind of I was then looking at, well, hold on, there's patterns in life. There's things unfolding. And then I started sort of looking more into books and then working on myself. But then I got into another relationship, kind of getting beyond that in 2020. So literally like a month before COVID came in.
Yep.
And we kind of had that lockdown and that shutdown. But with this kind of relationship, I then started getting into like the ability to practice this unknown skill set that I kind of had in the back boiler because of how I used to go through 10,000 lines of like accountancy. So I used to go through line by line, work out where there's problems, where there's issues, where there's transfers, and where you move things around. And then I started getting into the realms of naturally being able to work out where people were conflicted. So in terms of like the mental health side and the mental construct side.
So you're looking at timelines. Are you saying looking at timelines there, Chris? Like you sort of like you say, I've done bookkeeping, so I get where you're coming from. So you sort of look for where it's not lining up. Is that how you assess people yourself now, or yourself?
Yeah, it's kind of a bit of an esoteric mix. So like as soon as I started getting into that, I started going, well, hold on, you're telling me one thing, but you're doing another thing. So like that was the very surface level sort of, well, something's not right here. And then what I started getting involved in was getting drawn into more hypnotherapy. So I started going into doing hypnotherapy from a linear 3D perspective in terms of learning the skill set. But then what I found out is I could talk to people's subconsciouses without technically putting them into hypnotherapy. So what I then had is I had a way of getting access to kind of people's past and their backgrounds in order to create a story on my side that was literally as if it was playing out in front of my eyes, rather than kind of piecing it together as they'd done and filed it over years.
Because I'm just looking up I'm looking up some stuff now. So when you go up, that's why I'm just sort of looking down, just looking up some stuff. Akashic Records, because Jackie, my partner, does Akashic Records. Have you looked at all those kind of things as well? Because it sounds like you guys are sort of in the similar thing, looking at the past, what the past is doing, and then looking at your timelines and where it comes into here, and then you sort of work at where you sort of see where things sort of jumped, and then you could start to heal it. Would that be fair enough? Yeah, is that
so? It's similar, but with the Akashic Records, a lot of people can go in and view certain aspects and ask certain questions. Whereas what I generally find is the people that I work with, I can play a record. So what I found more so recently is I could talk to somebody about their childhood. We could go back to like them at the age of 3, but I can guide them through the rest of the scenario. So it's as if I'm kind of watching it from going into the record, and then I can tell them certain elements that are in their kind of background that they don't necessarily have full awareness of. It's subconsciously aware, but the conscious element isn't there. So what I then do is I say, well, actually, in this thing, I've got like your mum and your sister that are, say, by a fire,
right?
And they're talking, and then the person will go, oh, yeah, but this has just popped into my head.
Okay,
and
so
they were talking, and kind of it then linked back that way. But it's these like missing pieces that allow you to get like a disjointed learning theory.
That's I'm just looking up now. Past life and hypnotherapy. So with the hypnotherapy in your way, sometimes I know I got released more like towards my subconscious, and they came through a vision. Mm-hmm. It sounds like when you do your therapy, your superpower is to sort of take the person by the hand and walk through their life and sort of see where they're at. With that, it's a little bit different to what I do and what a lot of people. But that's very interesting. So you sort of like you put them under hypnosis, but you're actually with them. Is that
so?
Am I reading that right? Like you actually take am I reading that right?
Yeah. You're kind of there. It's like if I do like what you'd work out as talk therapy, that's when that side of it comes in. So it's not necessarily I have to take them into hypnotherapy to do it. I can walk them through elements of their life and ask them specific questions that they can then give me answers for, and then we piece the jigsaw together.
I'm just looking that up.
But also I can run them into a hypnotherapy session, and I can walk them through so that, like you say, you shut off the prefrontal cortex, you go into the subconscious, they then screen or have scenarios that come up. And then what I can do is I can go in and I can see what they're seeing, but in like my mind's eye.
Wow.
So
really,
one of the ladies I once worked with, I think it was about 2 years ago now, she had trouble with PCOS, and they were trying for a baby, but they couldn't. So they had 3 failed IVF treatments. And what we did is we went back in, I think it was about a 3-hour hypnotherapy session, and then I did an hour of kind of tying everything together.
So it was a 4-hour session. So this thing was a 4-hour session, was it?
No, so it was a 2-hour session and then 1 hour where we were
wow. So it's still 3 hours.
Whole,
that's huge. That's huge.
Yeah. So we basically walked through everything, and it transpired that her child was killed in a field while she was sleeping, and the murderer was a guy that lived in the house in the field opposite. And then what's happened in this lifetime is she's subsequently met her husband now at the age of like 22 at university. Right. And she developed PCOS very shortly after that moment.
Could you ask PC? Is it PCIS? Is it what was that? What's that stand for? Sorry, it's
PCOS. Oh yeah, no worries. Polycystic ovary syndrome. So it's just a natural kind of
worries. Sorry, I'm sorry.
Female, reproductive issue.
Just to let the viewers know. That's cool. Thank you.
Of course. Yeah. So what then transpired is that she'd met her husband in this lifetime. But her husband in this lifetime is the energy of the guy from the house in the past lifetime, which actually worked out to be, I think it was 1840s in Louisiana, and she's never been to America. So what then
Wow.
happened is he asphyxiated her, but I could see that she'd been asphyxiated, but she wouldn't tell me that she was asphyxiated. In this lifetime, her body's gone to the cellular memory, naturally created the PCOS to protect the child. In this lifetime,
Okay, I'm flipping
it's
out
not
here.
protecting like the child, it's protecting her from ever having the child. So it's denying her the child in this
Oh,
lifetime. So it became a karmic relationship that her and her husband had to work out in this lifetime.
so they're
So
karmic. So okay, so they're karmic, right?
yeah,
They're not. Are they
yes,
soulmates? Or are they karmic? They're just
no, they're
total.
karmic. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so that's
So
interesting. Rightio. Okay, keep.
yeah,
Sorry, keep. This is
so
wow.
I literally got to the point where we did the session. I explained all this and how it flows through. We then worked on her like sleeping issues and her childhood kind of side of things, and how that's mirrored, and how she has to face a wall, and how she doesn't like going to dark places, and she doesn't like sleeping because obviously the event from the past life is still running in the background. So I literally gave her a set of instructions to follow for 21 days. And literally within a week of my set of instructions, one of which was by her birthday, she should be pregnant. She'd had, I think it's a baby girl, literally, well, a week of a set of instructions that I gave her. Literally, because we ironed this past life thing out, we then aligned her with exactly what the past sort of structure was. We'd then given her an issue, which then resolved the PCOS, that then facilitated the fertility. And then she eventually went on to have the child that then balanced the karma between the two of them from the past life in this lifetime.
Bloody hell.
So this is kind of where you get into that realm. And I've had people that go into the womb and they have like problems with like the cold, and they found that like their mum was laying on the floor in pain and somebody was at a door and there was trauma, and then all this other stuff comes through. This is when you get into the wider world of like generational trauma and ancestral and lineage and bloodline clearing, and
Well,
yeah.
Oh, mate, I'll tell you, because I just because I had my, that's how Jackie and I met with the Akashic record reading, and she went through a few of my past lives, and basically it wasn't as well, you're more of the detail, where we worked out which star seed I am, which
Yep.
and the effects of certain things. But man, that's detail, because as I said with mine, I had I was stabbed in battle in front of my wife, in my first wife, which is where the American Indian affiliation, the love and the respect for them comes in. And then I have a child as well, and we were connected in this way, where I took care of her because I was a female in one of my past lives.
Yeah.
And I was being whacked and abused, and I had to protect her.
Yeah.
Something like that. And then I did the same thing here. So it's really, really funny about that, you know. And then you go through your spiritual awakening in this life, and you sort of wake up. That mate, that just flipped me out, man. Jeez, I tell you what.
But
that's amazing.
Kind of, that's just one of my early stories. So,
what year was that there, Chris?
So that was literally 2 years ago, and then 9 months before that. So roughly sort of 3 years ago now. So that was when I kind of started coming in. I think it was about June 2020 that was one of the first instances I came across. And that was one of the first outcomes that I had. So I kind of thought, well, the medical industry can't give you a child. Yet you've spoken to me for 3 hours, having struggled on IVF, and yet you're now pregnant. And you followed a set of instructions literally to the T, and then you've got the result that you wanted, but without all of this unnecessary sort of confusion. So that kind of reinstilled to me that I had a bigger purpose here, and I had other things that I needed to get into. So I then started exploring sort of more of that side. So I'd work with people with physical ailments, so like vaginismus. You then have like ovarian cysts.
It looks like you're working with regards to connecting people to the earth again, the pure feminine energy and the pure masculine energy, because I mean you have that in the twin flame. Because where I'm at with the shadow, I get people within, obviously going through what I went through, going within and untrapping those feelings and those emotions about yourself, and then motivating them to become better. That's where obviously being a teacher, that's where my skill is, and obviously being a performer. And then you use and then you bring in those other things, like, you know, bring in those other things that you learned to enhance and understand the processes of what you're doing. I'm a writer. I write. I'm a poet. I write a lot. So looking at what you're doing and the comparison to what we're doing, there's a lot of there's a lot of okay. Wait a second. So it's going to finish in first part's going to finish in 10. So we'll keep going. It's all good. So this is why I always relatively come to the super friends, because everyone's got their own powers, and you might need, you know, super strength, or you need someone like Batman needs, or the Flash needs speed. But you know what I mean? It sounds really corny, but it's what we're doing. I mean, we're helping people and connecting to the earth, but we've both got our own set of skills. Yeah, keep going. So that's amazing.
Yeah, so kind of that reinforced to me that, hold on, there's something kind of energetically out there. And then I started looking into sort of more Reiki energy healing, and kind of skilled myself in that, and then realized that I could obviously have my own method of doing things. I then started dealing with kind of feminine issues, but kind of my past background, if I go back to like the 1400s, was in midwifery. So I've kind of
is that one of your past lives, was it?
Yeah. So basically, I was a midwife in past life in the 1400s. So I used to deal with obviously pregnancy and obviously the fertility side of things.
Well, it makes sense. So would you? Yep. I'll just ask you, because it's coming full circle since the 8/8 Lionsgate portal open, and obviously it all started Halloween night, where there's massive changes coming through to get us really connected with the universe and the earth. Do you feel that you have increased your I guess power? I'll call powers, just for the sake of it. Do you reckon you've increased that with regards to helping people in that way, but also understanding yourself a lot more? Have you really unveiled a lot more to yourself, that you go, right, I'm a hypnotherapist, I've done this, but all these things that I've been doing in the past have come forth and go, that was your PhD in life to bring you to this moment?
Yeah, so a lot of this stuff is kind of self-related. So I've looked at my self-realization, my self-actualization. I've then taken my skill set and worked on other people. I've got technically a set of like conditions associated with a syndrome that I'm working through on my side, but they're all related to my higher purpose. But going back to obviously the point I was making, I then had a lady that had an ovarian cyst, and she had this kind of surgery coming up, and it was literally about 2 weeks away, and she literally had to get this cyst to under 4 centimeters from 7 in order to avoid having the surgery. So she spent, I think it was about an hour or 2 with me, and we worked out that in her mind she had a conflict between how she archived her mum, her teacher, and her mum as a teacher. So what then happened is, because she had a problem on her mum's side, it created from the ovarian cyst in terms of the feminine energy, and that's how it manifests physically in her body. So we worked on that, and then we subsequently changed this 7 centimeter cyst into her pre-scan when she had 2 4-centimeter cysts. So it meant that she no longer had to have the surgery, and then she could get away with having some tablets. And then we found out that actually in her dialogue that mum was mum teacher, rather than mum and teacher being 2 separate entities. So what then happened is, on her scan literally just before the session, she had no cyst, because we'd ironed out all of her issue with her mum, and on her mum's side rewired the mental side, and then the physical element just fell away. So that was then further confirmation for me that, like, I need to work out a structure that literally looks at things totally different, like the medical industry.
Can I ask you? I ask you there? While I've got the thing, do you have a set? You talk about structure, so you find the problem. Is there a particular way that you go about resetting the mind, or just an overview? So we've got a couple of minutes left in this part. If you want to, if you don't mind, just going through that, because that'd be good, and then we can move into that part. Go for it.
Yeah. So basically, what then happened is I had to set up a structure. And my structure was, if we look at ourselves as energy, and everyone is energy at source. So if you look at like atoms at scientific level, everything is 99.99999% energy and 0.0000001% nothing.
Yep.
So in that sense, I had to work with the spiritual element being like the balance and the harmony and the alignment. And then I had to work on the other components and realize that you have a mental element, you have an emotional element, and then you have a physical element. So depending upon how long like the problem or the issue has been in the system, it depends where it gets categorized in that structure. So if you've had it for too long and you've got life lessons and you've not quite gone into them and dealt with them and finished cycles and done all this other stuff, you'll get a physical manifestation. So that could be like cancer or hypothyroid, or you could have any sort of physical representation. So it could be a problem with like the feminine.
So that's the feminine if you haven't dealt with a certain issue or conflict or something. Is that right?
So that could be anything.
Right.
Yep. It doesn't matter whether your sort of gender is male or female.
Oh no, so I meant feminine. I'm sorry, I meant feminine or masculine energy. So I work with Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, so we've obviously got the masculine and the feminine energy within each of us, and we'll also have problems with the feminine or the masculine energy that is ourselves and is reflected. So this then gives us pieces of the puzzle. And then what we do is we take that physical element, we then work out where the emotional trauma is. We then go back to the childhood in terms of like the mental construct where it was learnt. And then what we do is we disconnect the mental by rewiring it so that we understand the story, the lessons, the application, and what we're here to learn. And as soon as we start filing that, as if like you're going to disk defrag a system, a computer system, it puts it into a nice little chunk that you then get a full story of. And then what you find is when you're safe and you're comfortable, you emotionally release, and then that subsequently gets rid of the physical ailment. So we're no longer in the realms of like medication or coping or treatment. We're literally going to root cause therapy and aligning the individual with who they were meant to be rather than who they have become due to all the conditioning. And then that's then where my world of like trauma informed comes in, and I literally get people to a state of balance and learning lessons. So technically I become like a spiritual guide or like an earth angel or some sort of mentor,
light worker, whatever you want to call it.
Exactly.
Do you feel like the connection between the universe and the earth? You feel like I feel like I'm more connected, obviously having that massive connection to the earth, especially. Do you feel like you're more connected to the earth and you're getting that, and you're getting those downloads from the universe to help, to assist and help? Is that where you're?
I get regular sort of influxes of energy, and I have to ground, and I have to do all my own personal care and things like that. But what I also find is I usually get downloads that are relevant to other people. So if I'm going to deal with somebody energetically, I align with them before going into like the session with them. So technically I know roughly where it's going to go or what we're looking at. And then I've got like body signs that then tell me when I'm on the right lines and when I've got to highlight key issues to people. So what I've then worked out is like, if you go back to something stupid like Pokemon, they've got the Pokedex, and it tells you all of like the people's characteristics or the little Pokemon fit monsters characteristics, like little
okay, things, gotcha.
And I basically, it's as if I've got like my body becomes that interface.
Oh really?
And I can scan people and tell them things that they need to. But some of the stuff I've dealt with is just crazy. It's like from a mental construct perspective, you'd never get to it in this lifetime or in other lifetimes if you went through any other thing. That's another story.
This is the thing about the skills that we all We've all had. I've only just worked out that we've got these life skills. Okay, I'm gonna cut this off now. We've got about a minute to go, guys. In part 2, we will be talking to Chris again about some of his experiences, and this has been an amazing chat. It's as I said, meeting these people who've got different superpowers. I mean, what can you say? So we'll be back with part 2 with Chris very, very soon. Get your water and just go for a bit of a stretch, do some DDP yoga. There's one for you, Dallas Page, one for you. We'll be back very, very soon.